Hello and welcome to the latest episode of True to Form, and trainer interviews is the state of play. Jamie Snowden landed listed honours at Warwick and had a third place in a Grade 2. I caught up with him to get the latest on Hollygrove Cha-Cha and a path to Ronda. Ben Pauling was probably hoping for a better weekend with Meet Me by the Sea and Mambo No. 5. However, he still has big targets for them. I also caught up with him to see what the latest with those horses is. Also spoke to both trainers about their weekend runners and, of course, my biggest eye catchers and names to note over the last 7 days. This is True to Form. Yes, welcome to the latest episode of True to Form, and it was great to speak to Jamie Snowden about two very interesting mares in Hollygrove Cha-Cha and a path to Ronda who ran on the weekend. I spoke to him about them as well as some interesting horses, not just for this weekend, but for the rest of the season. Here's the interview with the great man himself. Jamie, thank you very much for speaking to me. Pleasure to have you on. Look, some weekend for yourself. You didn't have too many runners, but you managed to land yourself a listed winner with Hollygrove Cha-Cha. Path to Ronda was third in the Grade 2. Hollygrove Cha-Cha started the season by going over fences and now a listed winner over hurdles this year. Just that was a nice performance on the weekend.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Yeah, it was a lovely performance. Great ride from Gav, and listen, she's a very talented mare. She won a Grade 2 last season. She jumps fences really well. We went up to Carlisle. She was third in a listed race at Carlisle on her chasing debut, and she won down at Exeter on her next start. So things were going well over fences, but she didn't jump great at Windsor on her last start when she was fifth in quite a valuable handicap there on the Winter Millions meeting. And we've done plenty of schooling with her since. We were actually going to go down to Exeter for a listed race on the Sunday this weekend, but just fearful of the weather, we actually put an entry in at Warwick, and Exeter was off, and we ended up at Warwick. So it was slightly fortuitous that we ended up in that race, but thankfully she did it well.
So how do you plot her going forwards then? Because obviously you've got the option of chasing and hurdling, but she's clearly, done well over hurdles on the weekend. Have you sort of even had a thought about where you might go with her next?
Yeah, so I think we're going to put we'll have lots of entries really, and just keep the options open for as long as we can, because she does like this softer ground. She's unexposed over 3 miles. It's something we've wanted to try for a while. There is a mare's listed race over 3 miles up at Kelso at the end of March, so that could be a possibility. But I think we'll put the entries in for Cheltenham. There's a 3 mile listed race at Exeter later on this month. There's the National Spirit that we could think about in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, we've got options.
Plenty of options, good to have. A path to Ronda, third in the Jane Seymour. I thought it was a very eye-catching run, this, considering she sort of the only one really off the pace to pick up and be sort of there or thereabouts at the finish. What did you make of a path to Ronda's run?
Yeah, I think if the race had been run at Sandown, we would have won. Obviously, the Jane Seymour was transferred from Sandown, that was cancelled onto Warwick, and Warwick is, as you know, is very much even on softer ground. It's quite a speed track and tends to suit horses running prominently, as you rightly say, and she just likes to come from off the pace a little bit, so it probably didn't suit her necessarily, and she does go slightly right. So I think the track really sort of slightly didn't play to our strengths, and she's done very well to only be beat 2 lengths. I sort of feel that she was a little bit unlucky at Haydock in the listed race earlier on the season, and slightly unlucky there again. I think there's sort of unfinished business in that grade, and I think we'll probably head to Ferryhouse for the Grade 1 over 2.5 over Easter.
That's exciting news. That's a really good, nice target to have going over to Ireland. I was going to say, she looks like a nice mare, but one that can probably stay a bit further. Would you come to the same assessment?
Yeah, she'll definitely stay. She's out of assisted to Symonds, so she's got a great pedigree, and be obviously nice to get the black type into her, but be wonderful to go and win one of these.
There you go, book your aeroplane flights to Ferryhouse then. Exciting stuff. And one more I was very interested by that you had win over the last week. Wild's Legacy won at Huntington. I thought quite impressive the way he was sort of came off the bridle early enough and sort of stayed on through the line. That was a nice run to make it 2 from 2 for you.
Yeah, I thought a really, really nice performance. He was very impressive the first day down at Lingfield on the all-weather. Conscious that I wanted to try him on turf, obviously, but to go and do that on softer ground around Huntington under a penalty, I thought that was a pretty good performance. He's a horse that we like a lot. He's got bags of speed, and stays well. I thought he hit the line really hard. So yeah, I think he's a very talented individual.
Exciting one for novice hurdles next season then?
Exciting one for novice hurdles next season. I think he'll have an entry in the champion bumper as well.
Very good.
And then we can consider that or entry perhaps. But yeah, I think he's a very, very smart horse.
Fingers crossed, put one in the trackers then. Just looking ahead at this week, there's a few horses that I'm very interested by just in general, but Epic West is one that I thought has been looking like a well-handicapped horse. He's obviously a bit disappointing first time out of fences off a long layoff, and then nearly went and won at Warwick, and you've got him entered Leicester on Thursday. Just, is he looking like a potential well-handicapped horse of 118 based on what he's shown so far?
Yeah, very much so. I think he's a nice horse. He won 2 of his 3 novice hurdles, and looked well handicapped to go novice chasing. Unfortunately, Kempton was rattling quick ground at Christmas, and he didn't really handle that, and probably a bit race rusty that day as well. But he was very good, I thought, at Warwick the last day. The ground probably wasn't quite soft enough, believe it or not, then. So, it was, before this deluge of rain, so it was probably only good soft that day. So yeah, Leicester hopefully should suit him well on softer ground, and yeah, hopefully he can go there with a decent chance. Hopefully it's on.
Yeah, hopefully it's on. It's heavy ground currently, so if you want softer ground, you'll be bang there at Leicester anyway. Just a couple of interesting ones. I thought Johnny's Jury has a couple of entries around the place. I remember speaking to you at the start of the season, a horse that was third for Nicky Henderson at Foss Lass in January, and now with you. And he was really impressive, beating Pourquoi Pas Papa at Exeter on hurdling debut, who's since come out and won for Paul Nicholls. So how exciting is Johnny's Jury as a horse to be going forwards with?
Again, so yeah, Johnny's Jury, I think he's a very nice horse. He's a brother of Appreciate It, and I thought his performance at Exeter was very impressive. As you say, the horse he beat by 10 lengths came out and bolted up at Wincanton only 10 days ago, whenever it was, and yeah, so I think he's a young, improving horse. That was only his second ever start, so you'd like to hope if he can show the same improvement from his first to his second start as to his second to his third, then he could be very good. That was on the back of a year off as well. So I think he's a talented individual, and yeah, we've got him out this week. Whether we go to Chepstow on Friday or perhaps wait for an EBF qualifier next week, we'll see. But he's a horse that lacks experience, but has plenty of potential, and he's in a couple of races at Cheltenham. We'll just have to see how his next round goes, as to whether we think about the EBF if he did qualify, or perhaps think about Aintree. But certainly he's a smart horse.
It definitely looks like it for sure. And finally, just a horse that maybe has been slightly frustrating for you is Gitmaker. He's showed so much promise behind another way you're thinking. A couple of seasons ago, you were targeting for the Welsh National, had a setback. Welsh National this year pulled up. Just is Gitmaker. What do you look at Gitmaker with now? Is he a horse that is still showing the same levels of form that you've always seen, or is he just slightly frustrating you a little bit at home?
No, yeah, so it's a very good question, because obviously since he finished second in the Kimyu and third in the Scottish National, it hasn't quite happened for him. Last year was a little bit of a write-off. We didn't have him quite right, and when we did have him right through the spring, the ground was too quick. We've had him right this winter. I'm very happy with him, but the Welsh National was on fast ground, which he doesn't want. So it just appears that whenever we've had him right, the ground's been quick, and whenever we've had softer ground, he hasn't been quite right. I mean, the softer ground's come now, and it's all been abandoned. We were going to go to Sandown, that was off. We're going to go to Exeter, that was off. So it's trying to combine when he's in good order and the ground's to his liking. So he is in the Grand National Trial at the weekend. It's the Royal Artillery next week as well, which we might think about. But he's still got the ability, but we just need the ground to. We need him to be right and the ground to be right at the same time, which hasn't been for the last 18 months, unfortunately.
So reading between the lines there, he was a horse obviously you fancy to be running well in these big races. He's now down to a mark of 129. I suppose you must be quietly excited to see how he can go in one of these big races over the next couple of months' time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously he's 10 years old now, so he's a veteran. So whether we need to be boxing a bit clever with him or going for a big handicap, we've still got those questions to ask ourselves. But he's a horse had very little racing. I think he's only had 4 runs pretty much all of his career. So each season, all of his career. So you'd like to hope there's still plenty left in the locker.
Amazing. Jamie, thank you very much, and I wish you the best.
That's very kind. Thanks, Ash. Take care.
Thank you very much to Jamie Snowden for taking the time out of his day to speak to me. I do think there's some very interesting horses of his running this week, and if Epic West does A, get declared, and B, if Leicester does go ahead, I think he's just a well-handicapped horse. I remember backing him at Christmas, and it was a good run at Warwick last time out. Softer ground, the better. He's definitely an interesting horse with Jamie Snowden going forward, who's in brilliant form this year. Another man who's in brilliant form is Ben Pauling. Maybe not so much on the weekend. However, Mambo number 5 and Meet Me by the Sea did run. They're both now qualified for the Novices Handicap Chase at the Cheltenham Festival. Both horses of big interest. And also Ben highlighted one horse running at Ascot this week who could be a very smart novice. Let's throw it over to this interview of Ben Pauling after I grabbed him after luck on Sunday. Pleasure to have Ben Pauling in here, just chatting a little bit about some runners you had this weekend. Ben, interesting weekend with Mambo number 5 going off a well-fancied runner and slightly disappointing Kingmaker. What did you make of the run?
Didn't jump from start to finish. Nothing worked. I thought he was in good form going into it. I thought it was a case of turning up, if I'm honest. Steel Alley's a very good horse, but I do think this Mambo is exceptional. But he didn't turn up, he didn't jump well enough, it didn't go to plan. He's come out of the race well this morning, and we'll see how he comes out of the race and make plans for the next few months off the back of that.
Now, I've mentioned before on True to Form that he could be a very interesting runner in something like the Jack Richards. I know it's obviously very early days and you want to see other horses, but could that be something that comes into your thought processes?
Yeah, very much so. He was, had he come through yesterday with flying colours, he'd have definitely been Arkle bound, but we just take stock, see what the ground does, see how he is. He could end up missing Cheltenham and going to Aintree. He's had a 4th run, opens up all sorts of handicap options for him. He could run the Jack Richards. It really is a moving feast at the moment with him, but first things first, we need to work on his jumping and make sure he's A1.
And another horse who could be Jack Richards bound, depending, you got the 3rd run in this weekend, Meet Me by the Sea. Again, wasn't really sized in the race, but do you take any positives from the race? And also now he's qualified for something like the Jack Richards.
I thought all his career, actually, I thought he'd love a bit of soft, heavy ground. But he won, I think, despite of that up at Ayr. He never looked to be travelling that well. On better ground, he does travel much better. Yesterday, it was as bad a ground as we've seen, and he just couldn't go a yard in it. So he's come back absolutely fine. He is qualified for handicaps, or novice handicaps now. But I think it'll be a case of seeing how he is. The Cheltenham's not necessarily the be-all and end-all, and we'll see how he's come out of the race and make a plan from there.
Fantastic stuff. And Reynolds Town this weekend, seems like you've got an interesting runner in the Jukebox Kid.
Yeah, so the Jukebox Kid will probably be entered. He seems to be very effective around Ascot. He's probably suited to soft ground, which I think we're going to get. So we'll see how he goes if we run him in that. He's also in the Racing Post Chase the weekend after, along with Your Darling, Leader in the Park. Bad's entered. Bad will be entered this weekend coming. There's quite a few of those sort of handicap chases. We seem to have a few that's probably further go right than left, or probably aren't suited by the hills. So we're probably relatively strong in the handicap chases over the next couple of weeks.
And finally, I'm going to slightly put you on the spot here, but over the last sort of month or a couple of weeks, is there a horse that I haven't mentioned that you've been really impressed by in the yard that you could be looking ahead to with some nice races in mind?
Mondwee Boy won his only start at Ludlow. Looks a very nice novice, and he runs Ascot this weekend in the 2 mile 5. I think it'll be a good race. It'll have to be very good if you're going to win with a penalty, but he goes there with a decent chance, and depending how he runs there depends on where we go in the spring and what we do, but he's certainly a horse I think I like.
Ben, thank you very much. Pleasure. Again, thank you very much to Ben Pauling for stepping in on the interview there. And, just as a thing for True to Form, I've mentioned Mambo number 5 for the Jack Richards before. He's been left on the mark of 146. If they do run him, I think he'd be very interesting. And I know he was a little bit playing with a straight bat regarding Meet Me by the Sea. However, I personally believe they will run Meet Me by the Sea in the Jack Richards. He has to be of massive interest of a mark of 139. I think he's looked very good at Ayr 2 starts ago, and he's definitely one to keep on side for Cheltenham if they do run him in the Jack Richards. Those are 2 great interviews. Now we roll on to the proceedings of Names to Note and Eyecatchers. Plenty of soft ground around the place over the UK and Ireland over the last 7 days. I'm actually cheating with my first winning name to note because I'm going back to the 1st of February, which is before I recorded the last True to Form. However, I wanted to see what the handicapper was going to do with Sequenta for Jamie Snowden, who I didn't ask about in the interview. However, I did ask away from the interview what the plan was with this horse. I thought it was very impressive, up £8 by the handicapper this week to a mark of 125. Now qualified for the EBF final at Sandown. I just think we'll really relish that test. Won very nicely at Market Raising on the 1st of February. That was soft ground, stiff enough test as well, and he seemed to gallop away from the last really impressively. You know, Sandown, we know that EBF final can turn into slightly softer ground. If that is the case, I think he could be a massive player in the EBF final, and it could be alongside Johnny's Jury if Jamie Snowden does get him qualified as well for the EBF final. So my first winning name to note is not from the last 7 days, it's from a few days before that, but I do think Cinquenta is definitely a horse to follow from the last winning period. I also thought Shermanator was quite good at Ludlow on the 4th of February. I liked how he was eyeballed by first candidate of Dan Skelton's, and even when got eyeballed, still went away and won nicely for Harry Fry. On a mark of 118, the handicappers left him on that mark. I think that's a very workable mark, especially on soft ground, to be doing that and going forward with. The second horse being rated 110 as a new handicap mark by the handicapper as we speak on Tuesday. Both horses seem of much interest to me, especially on softer ground. I do think the second horse there for Dan Skelton, the first candidate, can be a horse that can be winning a string of races together. So two nice horses there, Shermanator and first candidate. And finally, I went to Navan on Sunday. I'm going for Zanouche, won the Apples Jade Mares Novice Hurdle. It probably wasn't a great race, didn't have to put up a massive performance to win it. However, I did think she was very impressive. She jumped the two last hurdles quite impressively, went away nicely. It was on heavy ground, so I suppose you can take a little bit of pinch of salt regarding A, the form of the horses behind her, and B, the actual form of the race in regards to it being heavy ground. However, she was impressive. She's up to a mark of 130. That could be very interesting for handicaps, or if they decide to go for something like the Mares Novice Hurdle at Cheltenham, she wouldn't be without a chance. I do think her win also gives a nice, handsome compliment to Echoing Silence, who beat her at Cork in November. She's 12-1 for the Mares Novice Hurdle, and she's recently, well, not recently, in December time, beat Switch by Diesel at Punchestown, who's sets a nice standard of form from previous seasons of bumpers. So I do think that Echoing Silence is very interesting for the Mares Novice on the back of what Zanouche did on Sunday at Navan. But those are my winning names to note from this week. My one eye catcher for this week, and only the one because I do think there weren't too many around the places with the softer ground, is cheating slightly again because I'm going for a Tony Carroll horse. I know, shock, and even bigger shock, he had a runner over hurdles, which is, you know, you never see that happen. However, I do think that Free Dons ran a very interesting race at Catterick on Monday, the day before we record now, and yes, maybe I did have the blinkers on the Tony Carroll horse because it is a Tony Carroll horse. However, shaped nicely on handicap debut. First start over hurdles, having run twice at Leicester in two novices. I think shaped nicely. The winner just had lows in hand. I do think Free Dons loves soft ground and hopefully can be winning races if conditions stay like they are and Tony keeps plotting him over hurdles. So my one eye catcher from this week is from the Tony Carroll stable, Free Dons. Finally, for horses to follow this weekend, I'm not going to put up any sort of official selections as such. However, I've mentioned plenty of horse and eye catchers and winning names to note over the last few weeks of True to Form. And it's nice to see all of them coming together and running all in the same weekend. Got plenty to mention. Man of God was a horse I mentioned who ran at Fontwell a couple of weeks ago. Entered at Kelso on Friday for a Albert Bartlett Triple Crown Series qualifier. I think the final was the one at Punchestown. I thought that was a very interesting race and just an interesting entry. I thought Man of God could be interesting, especially in regards to potentially plotting towards Punchestown at the end of the year. Cocktail Blue's got two entries, Chepstow and Kelso on Friday. Interesting horse, ran a nice race behind Baron Noir earlier this season. Could be interesting, especially if they go for the Novices Championship qualifier in regards to potentially running in the final at Sandown later in the season. Love of Namor is a horse I highlighted, having ran well on New Year's Day at Cheltenham behind Ace of Spades and Mashan 2. That form looks obviously very, very good now, seeing as Mashan 2's won a Grade 2 since. She's entered at Chepstow on Friday and I believe also at Ascot on Saturday. So whichever race she goes to, I think she's definitely got a good chance dropping down into company. And just a couple of others as well. Crest of Fortune ran a nice race, a couple of nice races this season. Ends at Ascot for the Reynoldstown. Could be quite a deep contest, especially with the Jukebox Kid in there for Ben Pauling, but thought it was a very interesting eye-catching entry. And also Saladin's Son is hopefully running at Wincanton on Saturday. Thought it was a good run behind top of the bill early this season. Disappointed slightly since, however, I thought it was a very good run behind top of the bill and could take a bit of beating at Wincanton this weekend. But those are True to Form eye-catchers and winning names to note running this weekend. Thank you very much for watching the latest episode of True to Form. If you did enjoy, please do like and subscribe to the Racing TV YouTube channel. Get your comments down below what you think of my opinions and any bold opinions you have yourself, and make sure to tune in to the next episode of True to Form. Thank you very much.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.